is what Sanjeev Srivastava was talking about Ashok Malik. 90% of the Yadavs backing the Mahagathbandhan, maximum tickets to the Yadav community being given by the Mahagathbandhan, did they unwittingly make the same mistake that the Congress did in Haryana? That such a strong counter consolidation happened. What happened to the Jats versus Dalits there, has that happened between the Yadavs on one side and the OBCs, EBCs, everyone ranged on the other side? Ashok Malik.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been some Yadav vote moving towards Narendra Modi in Lok Sabha elections, but in Vidhan Sabha elections in Bihar, the Yadav votes tend to consolidate around the RJD. As was mentioned, this is both the RJD's strength, its core strength, also its Achilles' heel, because once you see the Yadav, who are seen as a dominant community, especially in rural Bihar, they're seen an aggressive community. EBCs, other OBCs tend to consolidate and, circle the wagons and back the non-Yadav candidate or the other candidate. And that is where Nitish Kumar has been extremely successful, along with the BJP, in stitching together a grand non-Yadav coalition, which seems to have stayed with him this time as well. I do expect there was, after 20 years, some urging for change in Bihar. But when you contrast that with the change that will lead to a Yadav resurgence, then Nitish's voter says, I'm better off with the leader I have today, rather than risk Yadav domination and Yadav Raj all over again.
All right, so we've seen the caste-wise breakup or the community-wise breakup of what the vote shares are. What is the overall vote share? Let's have Rahul Kanwal, Editor-in-Chief and CEO of NDTV, join us there to take us through those numbers.
Padmaja, there seems to be a bit of a twist in the tail. The polls that came out yesterday were suggesting an overwhelming one-sided victory for the NDA. It's very interesting now, and we'll do a quick analysis based on the vote share numbers. You're seeing this for the first time. Access My India vote share numbers coming up on your screen right now for NDTV, giving just a 2% gap, 43 versus 41. So if Pradeep Gupta and Access My India are right, there is a big twist in the tail. It doesn't mean, Padmaja, in the least bit that the end direction will change. What it means, though, is that unlike the analysis that we did yesterday, Access My India's team is suggesting that there's just a 2% gap.
But this is still a huge gap compared to what the actual gap was in the results of 2020, because there the gap was only of 0.03%. So for that,
it was 0.03 if you leave the LJP outside. If you bring the LJP into the beginning formation, then it's 42 versus 37. There's a 5% gap relative to that.
Okay, so that has
the starting
now.
Point. If you compare the NDA in its formation versus the MGB, and there's another poll that you put out just a moment before now. That's from VoteVibe,
that's
and we'll have Amitabh Tiwari join us as well. That's also showing a tighter fight. Remember, and I'll show the next set of data which you were looking at, which just shows the massive consolidation, huge, unprecedented Yadav Muslim consolidation in favor of the Mahagathbandhan. 90% in this poll. Pradeep and his team have been out, and he'll join us in a short while to talk about this poll. 90% Yadav consolidation, 79% Muslim consolidation is extremely high. What the NDA has been able to do is that they've been able to ensure that amongst the Dalits, they're still ahead by 20%. What this means is the Congress had a Dalit state president. Their hope was that they'd be able to wean some of the Dalits away. To some extent, it succeeded, but the NDA is still number one, thanks to the likes of Jiten Ramanji and the other arithmetic that they've done. Amongst the EBCs as well, the NDA firmly entrenched at 58.
And this is despite the fact that not just the Congress, Tejasvi Yadav held multiple EBC Mahapanchayats. He tried to reach out to the community and say that I am not just about MY. I want to have a broader coalition. But far from a hawa for change, it seems that traditional vote banks, Rahul, have hunkered down.
It's worked. From 37, if the Gathbandhan's vote share goes up to 41, that's 4% more. And this is just based on...
Among the MGB?
No, not
among the EBCs, you
mean.
mean?
They were 37% last time and 41% this time. In this Access My India data, that's a 4% increase in favor of the Gathbandhan from the last poll to now.
You mean in the overall vote percentage?
Overall vote percentages. If you've gone up 4% on your base, it means that you haven't done badly. What this essentially means is that while the NDA may still win, Pradeep and Axis My India are suggesting that this is a much closer win. And to some extent, he's weaned away some of the EBC votes. Remember the likes of Vikashsheel Insan Party, he had Mukesh Saini there, he had IIP of Gupta there. To some extent it's worked, which is how he's been able to get, for example, 14% of the general community, 19% of the OBC. So there's actually a very, very different story emerging this time. The end match result doesn't change.
It's not as close, or it's not as much a sweep as was predicted yesterday. It could be far closer. What could this also mean, Rahul? That on many seats, you would have closer contests, and perhaps on some of the seats which enjoy, or rather which suffer from individual anti-incumbency, you could have big faces of the NDA losing.
Can I tell you what this also could suggest? And this is important for the viewers to look at. The Yadav and the Muslim votes, as Sanjeev Srivastava will agree, are very strongly concentrated. So it is possible that at the state level, you may still be behind in terms of vote share, but your seat conversion may be better because the Yadavs and Muslims are very strongly consolidated in several areas of Bihar. And therefore, the big story that is emerging...
Like you have Magad, you've got Bhojpur, you've got areas of Simanchal. Simanchal, of course,
wherever there is
EBC
concentration, your ability to convert votes into seats is higher. Therefore, while the NDA at 43% may have more staggered vote share, a concentrated vote share delivers a higher vote to seat ratio. That's the thing to look at. So I just want to put out the big vote share numbers once again, a very clear twist in the tail here. Pradeep Gupta and his team, and he often does this, like to spice things up. So there is some extra mirch masala in this poll, just a 2% gap, and JSP at 4%. That's really farsh from the lofty claims that Prashant Kishore made. But if 4% is where the JSP stands, remember the Gathbandhan and the JSP then are more than the NDA. A certain amount of anti-incumbency vote.
But he has said कि ना पहले गठबंधन ना बाद में गठबंधन. He has made that very clear.
No, but just with 4%, his seat conversion ratio will be very low. Remember, in a state like Bihar, if you look at past electoral data, seat conversion really starts above 8%. So at 4%, he may pick the odd seat if his votes are concentrated there, but it doesn't lead to a pan-state conversion. Sir, this is less than what Chirag Paswan got in the last elections. He was at about 6%. So it's a start. But Axis My India is not predicting very big numbers. Let's just get a quick word in from all our guests on these numbers put out by Axis My India. He hasn't put out the seat share numbers just yet, but it's very clear this is going to be an interesting, spicy, exciting evening. Definitely more exciting than the polls that came out yesterday, because a 2% gap in vote share is much lesser than the minimum gap, which was yesterday at 6%. Tehseen Poonawalla, are you hoping that thanks to concentration of Yadav Muslim votes, there could be a twist in the tail? That's the direction in which Pradeep Gupta seems to have put out his vote share numbers.
Yeah, so before just joining the show, I was talking to people in Patna, and the only hope after yesterday is that this is much closer than it looks like yesterday. And some of the math yesterday honestly did not add up. So this seems more believable, and we are more hopeful with this. But one more thing, I'd be very...
Veera, any poll that shows them having a bit of a chance is obviously more believable than a poll which shows a one-sided. And the other thing is, regardless of who wins or loses, if this is the way it'll be, it'll keep us in business on Friday morning.
You know, I also want to gently point out, Rahul, that before you walked in, Tehseen Poonawalla was singing a dirge for the Congress. Now suddenly he is hopeful that it's going to be a very close contest.
I am a politician. I have to go where the wind blows.
You are the Pantu Chacha of this election.
I am a politician. I have to go where the wind blows. Come on, Padmaja.
Veera.
No, 2% vote share difference could mean anything, Rahul. In an election, 2% vote share is a huge difference. I mean, I don't know, and I think the 12% down there as well, if you take these numbers with pinch of salt, you still have to
but it's
wait
interesting.
for the seats.
Listen,
it will be
I don't blame Tehseen.
Yeah.
It's like cricket commentary. You comment on the score that you see in front of you. The score changes and the commentary changes as well. This is Axis My India creating some buzz, some spin, some twist. I'll give you the breakup for geography and the breakup for gender. This again becomes very, very crucial. Remember, in the 243 Assembly of Bihar, 122 is the magic mark. So let's take a look at where the geographical breakup of Bihar stands, and then also let's look at gender. So
now we're going to see the rural versus urban. What is the breakup of how people in rural Bihar and urban Bihar have voted? So according to the Axis My India, numbers so far, the rural vote share with the NDA is at 43%, and for the Mahagathbandhan, it is at 41%. When it comes to urban India, NDA gets 44%, and for the Mahagathbandhan, it's at 42%.
But
so just
unlike a
2%.
Maharashtra or a Gujarat,
Not
urban rural
substantially
is not so
urbanized.
important in the context of Bihar because most of the vast majority of the seats are concentrated in rural areas. It will be very interesting though to look at the gender divide when it does come out, because the gender divide will show the skew in favor of the NDA. But what is very, very clear from the data that if you're 44 versus 42, as it is in urban areas, it's not a Sanjeev Srivastava knockout blow in the way that was being suggested yesterday by the pollsters who put out their data while polling was still going on. Axis My India is not suggesting that this is a knockout blow. Neither is Vote Wipe. So two pollsters who've come out today show this battle to be closer. Directionally NDA ahead, but not a knockout blow.
So if you really ask me, Rahul, in these death hours before the result comes in, I actually want to be in a silent zone because it is
Only
just
Netas are allowed to be in a
so
silent
risky
zone. This
to
is where
just
Pandits do
keep-
Panditry.
Yeah. So at the risk again of sticking my neck out, even the 2% vote, I got the sense that NDA was comfortably ahead while
2% is not
while
comfortable.
traveling in Bihar.
2% is
so
not
if
comfortable.
this 2% holds true, no, I think 2% should still be good enough to land them an easy victory.
No,
if
but,
it is a two,
but
if
when
this
everyone
if it
else is
becomes-
pointing out a 6, 8, 10%
Maybe,
victory, the moment
maybe,
it comes down
maybe.
to 2,
See,
given
because the thing is
especially
this MY consolidation is a double-edged sword. The more they consolidate, more the reverse consolidation takes place. So it's very interesting. See, one has to really now wait for the 14th. I can speak till kingdom come, but my sense still is that Nitish is the decisive person. Tejasvi was the most popular face on the ground, but he is unable to expand that envelope beyond MY in any significant way.
But that's not what this data is saying.
No,
if
this
the
data is
if the
saying that only,
Gathbandhan
Rahul.
vote share has gone up from 37 to 41,
Yes.
the RJD, the Congress, the VIP have been able to expand their vote share
But the ECB
and their vote base.
There is still a big gap between the ECB vote,
can we
between
now-
SC vote.
Let's take a look at the vote share percentages. I think this becomes very illustrative and important because it gives you a sense of how things have changed. Not since 1950, which was the first election in Bihar, has Bihar voted in quite the percentage that we've seen in this election. We'll pull it out. We looked at this on a very long trend line. You haven't had such strong voting ever. Amongst first-time voters, again, Axis My India bowling an absolute googly for amongst first-time
God, this is
voters.
crazy,
Axis
yeah.
My India is predicting that 37% NDA versus 46 for the Gathbandhan. First-time voters are those between 18 and 19 who haven't voted previously. That's about 2.2% of the total electorate of Bihar in this election. This is a very small chunk, but it shows the
This is the knockout figure.
that there is some
is the wonder.
anti-incumbency amongst the youth, Padmaja. 37
and
versus
that
46.
promise of Tejasvi Yadav, if you've got first-time voters preferring the Mahagathbandhan over the NDA,
But it's
then
not
there
just
is-
first-time voters. Look at the next sheet on your screen. Amongst those between 20 and 29 as well. 37 for the Gathbandhan, 44 for the MGB. This is why the ability to spot data, spot trends is so significant. As I said, Axis My India was essentially directionally suggesting that this is a much closer poll than the pollsters yesterday. Amongst those between the age of 20 to 29, 37 for the NDA versus 44, a 7% lead in favor of the Gathbandhan. This is getting very, very exciting, at least as far as this poll is concerned. Remember, we don't know what will happen on the 14th just at this moment, but if you look at the age-wise graphic, it shows amongst younger voters in Bihar a very clear sense of
Now we
disenchantment.
have a full breakup of the different age groups and who they have preferred, and it's quite clear that in the youngest voter block, you have the Mahagathbandhan getting an edge, and the older the voter gets, the more he or she swings towards
But
the
it's
NDA.
very clear, Padmaja. Those who've seen the Lalu Raj, they voted 45 versus 41
Yes.
for the NDA. There's a 4% lead here. The further you move away from Lalu Raj, 30 to 39, 20 to 29, the bigger the lead of the Gathbandhan, which means they don't particularly care because they haven't seen it, they haven't experienced it. Amongst the older people, look at the gap here, a solid 16% gap between the Gathbandhan and the NDA amongst those who are 70 and above.
And it's the youngest people also, Rahul, who the Jan Suraj has managed to reach out to, which also would have impacted the NDA because the core voter that prefers the Jan Suraj is the core voter of the NDA.
No, but the other way to look at this data is
young,
if the JSP hadn't been there,
upper caste.
if this is his lead with the JSP, imagine if the JSP wasn't there and some more of the disenchanted actually moved here, a 2% lead could have looked very different because you got younger voters. If they are disenchanted as this data suggests, then it's possible that some of the 6% in these two categories may have potentially moved here if JSP wasn't
But
in
if
the
they are
fray.
upper caste, maybe they could have gone to the NDA.
But I'm saying that that's the point which suggests that amongst younger voters, very clearly disenchantment visible. 10% gap amongst those 60 to 69, and you've got over here a 8% gap between those 50 and 59. So the big story that's emerging here, the younger you are, the more you seem to have voted for the Gathbandhan. The older you are, the more you seem to have voted for the NDA. Axis My India, as is often the case, throwing an absolute twist in this tale in Bihar, which looked like it was all settled. Friday morning, we could all go back home very early. Veer Sanghvi now joins us. Veer, welcome. We've got some excitement on the screen now. Look at the disenchantment that's visible amongst those who are younger in the Access data, Veer.
Well, that's roughly what we said yesterday. We said people who had no memories of Jungle Raj would actually vote much more for the Lalu Prasad Yadav family. And we said, if you remember, that by the next election we enter a completely new era because there will be young people and won't be memories of the old days. That seems to be borne out here.
No, and it also shows, Ashok Malik, that if you haven't seen the Lalu era, then you don't care as much. See, those who are less than 29, there's a 7% lead in favor of Tejaswi and the Gathbandhan in this Access My India data, which basically means if you haven't seen the Lalu Raj, you aren't worried about Jungle Raj. There are more immediate problems of joblessness, underemployment, migration, which is of concern to you. Ashok Malik, what are you making of this Access My India data?
You know, to be honest, we are going through multiple polls and we are seeing multiple numbers and we are all speculating. I quite find it believable that younger voters would be anti-incumbent and those above 70 would be more pro-incumbent. That is possible. However, these numbers look a little, I don't expect the younger voters will be give the NGP a 10% advantage and voters above 70 would give the NDA a 16% advantage. The numbers will be closer. I agree there can be differences, but 16% is too extreme, so is 9%. I think things will be closer. So perhaps it's a tighter election than yesterday's polls indicated, quite possible.
No.
But
here's the thing, and it's very clear. The two polls that have come out today, Shubhrashra, are showing a much tighter race. Yesterday it was a no contest. The two polls, Vote Vibe and Access My India, that have come out today are showing a much tighter fight on the ground than what we saw yesterday. Shubhrashra, would that lead to some concern? You come from Bihar, you understand well the concentration of Yadav Muslim votes, which means 41 for the MGB is worth a lot.
And Rahul, very quickly I want to mention that now we have the numbers for those among the voters who are unemployed, and here also the Mahagathbandhan has quite a sizable lead, 15% lead because they have 49% among those unemployed, and NDA stands at 34%. So if we are looking at factors and these numbers hold true, then the disenchantment could also come from the job issue.
Look at that, look at that gap of 15% gap. 15% gap in favor of the Gathbandhan. The narrative, the meta trends emerging from the Access My India poll and the poll from
Vote Vibe
is very different from what we saw yesterday. So those who spent more time looking at what happened during the second phase seem to have come up with a picture very different from those who looked at just a few hours the second phase and came out with their numbers. A 15% lead for the Gathbandhan would essentially suggest a big moral blow for the NDA, because that's a big lead for the Gathbandhan if this is the way data turns out on the 14th. Shubhrashra, what are you making of the Access data?
Yes. So all that you said, And in addition, I would just say that then the conversation will be on narrative of what the Mahagathbandhan sold, what the NDA sold, and what really held ground despite the 10,000 rupee cash transfer in Jivika Didi's account, and the whole conversation about how women voters are really holding the fulcrum of this election. Secondly, I also feel that if Access My India data holds true, it would also mean that hyper-localizing the election, especially assembly election, always works. You do not allow national narratives to dominate the state scene. You stick to the mandate of talking about jobs, of talking about constituency development issues, and it pays you in the long run.
You know, Rahul, I have to say on the issue of jobs, while yes, people may be distressed for lack of jobs, more specifically government jobs, I personally did not find the promise of government jobs clicking with anyone. And this cuts across rural and urban, and hardly any urban.
Students,
but even in
48% for Gathbandhan versus 33. That's a 15% lead. So basically, ladies and gentlemen,
so we have the farmer vote here as
process
well.
this data live. What has happened is 2 elections have been fought. One election amongst the young, the unemployed, who were clearly disenchanted. The other, older generation, who felt that they've seen Lalu Yadav's Raj. They didn't want that to come back. 2 completely different elections were executed on the ground. Take a look at the Labour vote on your screen right now. If you look at the student vote, 33% for NDA versus 48% for the Gathbandhan. 41 versus 43 in favor of the Gathbandhan amongst labourers, a 2% lead. 42 versus 43 in favor of the Gathbandhan amongst farmers. Unemployed, 34 versus 49, 15%. A lot of the trends, Veer Sangvi, from yesterday are changing.
How do they have?
The older people who have seen Lalu's Raj have backed Nitish. The younger people say we don't want more Nitish.
So one big message may be that the younger is maybe transcending the caste rainbow. Because the anger and frustration below 30 group, may not be conforming.
No, but I'll tell you where it'll switch. It'll switch when you see the gender vote.
And that's what we're putting out right now.
I'll show you the gender vote. That's the question that Sanjeev Srivastav is asking. That's the question that we'll now seek to try and answer. Because if MGP has won among so many communities, then how is it still in front? The answer will likely be in the gender vote that's coming up on your screen right now. Here it is, for the first time, the gender vote, 45 in favor of the NDA, 40 for the MGB, a 5% gap in favor of the Nemo factor. Nitish and Modi, 5% up over Tejaswi. So it's really...
And the men seem to be leaning towards the Mahagathbandhan again.
If you saw that detailed data set that we put together in our X factors, we'd said youth for change versus women for Nemo. How, if this is right, then that was a very smart graphic to have made, because that's exactly what seems to have happened. 5% lead in favor of the NDA amongst the women. That really, Veer Sangvi, is what seems to have saved Nitish Kumar.
Yeah, I mean, these results are very different from yesterday's. And one of the questions we asked yesterday was, why are people not complaining about unemployment? Why are young people not frustrated? This suggests that they do want to change. On the other hand, we've been talking for years about Nitish and the women's vote, but 5% is not as dramatic as was being projected yesterday. Some people were talking about 10% or whatever. 5% is in line with what he's doing.
But when your overall lead is 2% and you're trailing in so many other categories, it's women who've really helped you cross the line. Take a look at, because this election, as I said, is in 2 age categories. Those below 39 and those above 40. If you can come closer, those in the category of 20 to 29 years of age, 44 versus 37 in favor of the Gathbandhan. That's a 7 points lead. As you go up and look at those who are between 18 and 19, there's a 9% lead in favor of the Gathbandhan. As you come towards the older people, a 16% lead in favor of the NDA. That's where this election has been won by the older people, the young Padmaja very clearly disenchanted.
And if I may add to this, it's also about the weightage. Look, when we're talking about these various age groups, see what percentage. Can you please go back to the earlier slide? Let's go back to the earlier slide, because it shows the weightage. That picture actually showed what percentage of each age group is there. Here. So you see the 20 to 29 is just about 22% of the population, where the NDA is trailing. But 30 to 39, where the NDA gets a little lead, here is when the actual weightage starts climbing. 26% of the people polled in this exit poll are in the age bracket of 30 to 39%. And here is where the numbers for the NDA start adding up. But I want to play the devil's advocate and say, fine, the numbers...
But it's the same thing, Padmaja. If you see, there's 50% of the vote above 40, 50% of the vote is below 39.
No, so it's 24 here. First time voters are just 2%.
24
20 to
and
29.
26.
Yeah.
So you got 50 here and you got 50 here.
But here they
in
have the
terms of,
lead. Here
you know,
they
that's what I'm
have
saying.
the
So
lead.
just a 1% lead. So basically, the election is fought and won by the fact that you've got 2 categories here.
Yes.
And you've got 4 categories here, with this 30 to 39, those in the middle being very close to each other.
The outcome.
Rahul, here's a devil's advocate. Do women below the age of, say, 29 not want to go with the youth and want jobs? Will they still go with the Nemo factor, as you put it? I mean, I find that strange. If you want jobs, why
No,
would
but maybe you
want
feel
Nemo?
safe with Nitish Kumar. See, I'll give you an example. When we'd gone to cover the Tejasvi rally in Kishanganj, at the end of it, somebody took the mic and ran away in that rally. So there is a certain element of lawlessness. They kept shouting, "Arey, jisne mic liya hai, lota do, lota do, lota do." Women also see that there is a certain element. They call it a rela instead of a rally when the when the RJD comes to town. There is a certain element of lawlessness, and maybe that irks women. You want some safety, and Nitish Kumar provides that.
But I want to ask another devil's advocate question, Veer Sanghvi. Of course, people are disenchanted. There is a little bit of anger about the lack of jobs. But if we are saying that the Mahagathbandhan is getting this disillusioned vote, are we suggesting that these young men, largely young men who are first-time voters and then in the age group of 20 to 29, they genuinely think that Tejasvi Yadav can produce 2.5 crore jobs in Bihar, government jobs?
No, Padmaja, generally what happens in most elections is that it's not oppositions that win them, it's governments that lose them. It may well be that Tejasvi can't do this, and I agree with you, it's unrealistic. But how else do they show their protest? How else do they indicate that they're frustrated but to vote for the government in power? No matter how unrealistic the expectations are.
Okay, so this is a vote of anger, essentially.
It's a protest vote.
No, and now we've got the data for the chief ministerial candidates. Who was the preferred chief ministerial candidate here? Tejasvi outscores Nitish Kumar by 12%. Tejasvi Yadav has 34% approval rating in this Axis My India post-poll study versus Tejasvi Yadav, versus Nitish Kumar, who's at 22. So you got a 12% lead in favor of Tejasvi Yadav.
Which is the opposite of what Vote Vibe said. Vote Vibe actually just gave them a 1% lead to Tejasvi Yadav, and Nitish Kumar was a very comfortable, I think, 33, 32%.
The good thing is
40% with women.
that there is an exciting counting day that you need to watch. Friday morning, drop what you are doing, sit back, watch NDTV. There will be a contest. It's not one-sided sweep in the way is being suggested. 4% for Prashant Kishore. Chirag Paswan came in at 5. Samrat Chaudhary at 2. Tejasvi at 34. And you had Lalu at 2. So that 34 and 2 is 36 actually. Which basically squares off against the 22 for Nitish Kumar. And in some senses, Padmaja, it also intuitively makes sense. He's old, he's aged, he's got health problems, and therefore you won't have people yearning and desperate for him to be chief minister. It's quite logical in that sense.
But I would like to differ slightly with that. I also felt that for people, Nitish Kumar was a comfort.
Sure.
There was an element of, at least he's a known devil. Sabhya, this word was used again and again. वो सभ्य हैं. He's educated. There was, among people that we spoke to, a little bit of a concern about the return of I'll just say it, the return of Yadavs. There was a section of people who will say, okay, the Yadavs, they've been out of power for 20 years. They are very aggressive. There was a sense that perhaps there could be counter consolidation. Nitish Kumar is a safe bet, at least for women. They seem to be very comfortable with the idea of somebody who's given them what they needed for 20 years. And he's a Sabhya person, Sabhya and Shaleen. You hear that a lot for Nitish Kumar. But despite that, of course, the numbers here seem to suggest that overall, either we've had, men who came out to vote, although our turnout showed that women were there in far greater numbers.
Okay. We can now take the region-wise breakup one by one. This is what often is the case. It almost is like that two different elections. So we'll start with Champaran. On the 21 seats of Champaran, NDA at 12, the Gathbandhan at 9. So in the first region for which we are putting out data, you've got the NDA at 12, you've got the Gathbandhan at 9. It's 44 versus 41 in favor of the NDA on the 21 seats of Champaran. The first region for which we have seat share. If you want to take a pen and a paper, start noting down, you can. We'll see how this adds up. In the first region, a 3-seat lead in favor of the National Democratic Alliance, 12 versus 9 in favor of the Gathbandhan. In the first region for which we have data, which is Champaran, 12 versus 9, a 3-seat lead in Champaran for the NDA. That's the first region that's just gone.
And this is not surprising because, as Shubrasta will bear me out, Champaran traditionally also has a fair bit of upper caste, the traditional voter base of the BJP in particular, Shubrasta. These numbers, 12 in Champaran for the NDA as opposed to 9 for the Mahagathbandhan, and in terms of vote share, also you've got the NDA ahead. The NDA in Champaran gets 44% as compared to the Mahagathbandhan's 41%. So the initial seats now we've started putting out. Your thoughts on Champaran? Shubrasta.
Yes, Padmaja, Champaran has been a huge space for these fights between the RJD and BJP. And I wouldn't be surprised if Champaran throws up this challenge, because as much as we would want to talk about this election being a Nitish Kumar election and NDA throwing its weight around Nitishji, one must also remember that there is also an election where Tejasvi Yadav has a lot to prove to his cadre, to the kind of conversations that are happening at his home, which is another chapter altogether. And so people on ground, Karyakartas on ground, are really fighting tooth and nail. So I wouldn't be surprised if Champaran throws this pattern. However, let me also put a rider. This is Access by India's a poll, and we don't really know. I'm sure the sample size is not as huge as of course.
No, it's 42,000. So we have the sample size about 42,000. We have the full breakup of how this has happened. Amongst the men, the lead that the MGB has is 1%, 42 versus 41. Please listen to this very carefully. Amongst men, Gathbandhan is 42 versus 41 for the NDA. Amongst women, NDA is at 45 versus 40. That is really why there is a difference. Amongst male voters, the Gathbandhan is actually ahead by 1 percentage points in the data that's put out by Access My India. It's amongst women. महिलाओं ने नीतीश की गंगा जी पर नैया पार कराई, 5% lead in favor of the NDA, Padmaja.
And that has always been the sense in Bihar across. Like we said, and a lot of people have been talking about this 10,000 scheme, but this hasn't always been a winning formula.
No, but it's helped them. It's helped them.
It's helped them, but that's not the only thing that has helped them. Remember, Nitish Kumar has done over the last few months, he has increased the pension of women. He has ensured that girls, that on graduating, they get 50,000 rupees. That's a huge amount of money, and it's incentive, more importantly, Rahul, for families to keep their girls in college. So all of these girls are also voters. In addition to that, this 10,000 was a cherry on top.
Veera, the fact that Jan Swaraj Party spoke that they will let alcohol come back, do away with prohibition, has led to a 2% deficit amongst the women versus men for PK. Small things matter. We may think it's a good idea for there to be alcohol because prohibition doesn't really work. JSP tried it, it didn't work for them.
Look, if this data is anything to go by, then whatever pitch you give me, Tejasvi Yadav says I can bat better than Prashant Kishore, at least at the moment, and Nitish Kumar. But I think more importantly, the other point that Padmaja was making and Veer was also making, it's not so much about the sense that, as you said, there was so much talk about unemployment. It's the fact that you've been in power for 20 years, you've not given the vision to give that dream or portray that. When people spoke about unemployment, at a sense, I think the reason why there was a disenchantment with Nitish Kumar is after 20 years, you don't have that kind of a larger vision to solve that problem.
Actually, over the 20 years right now, Bihar is the fastest growing state. Sure, you could argue that it is still the poorest state across the country, but it is also the fastest growing. But because the base was so low, the fact is that materially, if you talk about school dropout rates, if you talk about rural electrification, and this is data borne out by Government of India, by Government of Bihar figures, rural electrification, how many births are taking place in hospital have gone up many-fold over the last 20 years.
So it's the old socialist way of looking at it, right? You gave roads, you gave electricity, you gave that infrastructure, that's the part of the government. But what about that vision map to offer, let's say, an industry that will come in which will give you employment there?
Sure.
That was not there.
And they'll always
that was not part of the
Maybe people just got tired and said, who knows, we will do something krantikari as they say.
We have the education breakup for data. This again is very significant. It will give you a sense of how the votes happened. Amongst the illiterates, NDA leads versus the Gathbandhan 43 versus 42. Amongst those who studied up to the 9th standard, NDA leads the Gathbandhan 44 versus 42. Amongst those who are 10वीं pass, the NDA leads the Gathbandhan 43 versus 48. Amongst those who are 12th pass, NDA leads 44 versus 41. Graduates is only 41 versus 40. Postgraduates, surprisingly, MGB is ahead by 3 percentage points.
This is very surprising, Rahul, because...
And Gathbandhan 42 versus 39 amongst those who are professional degree holders.
Because one of the main and the sharpest attacks on Tejaswi Yadav, and this was very personal, throughout leaders of the NDA kept saying, Sanjeev ji, ye to navi fail hai, ye to navi fail hai, inko kya pata. Prashant Kishore went to town saying again and again, अरे उनसे पूछे, Asaduddin Owaisi of all people, he said कि उन्होंने मेरे को extremist बोला, मैंने कहा मुन्ना extremist की spelling तो तुम लिख करके मेरे को दिखा दो. But despite all of that, it seems that professionals...
Amongst the professionals, JSP's actually got 10 and 8%. JSP's done badly amongst the people with lesser educational qualifications, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's almost going up in ascending order. Amongst those who are better educated, Prashant Kishore has made the biggest impact.
One imagines largely urban. These would be largely people in urban areas, perhaps in Patna and thereabouts. But this is quite surprising that you have professional people with degree, and again it may boil down to, like
not
Rahul
so surprising.
said, those who have a degree but no jobs.
If this number is true, it's not so surprising because these are the people who will be hurting most because of unemployment.
Yes.
Or underemployment.
You have a degree.
So it must be with a degree but without a job, postgraduate but without a job, professional degree but an underemployment. So their frustration will be even more than the
well-known psychologist Jai Mrug now joining us. Jai, this is very interesting, very different from the narrative yesterday. Axis My India suggesting a much tighter fight than what was being predicted yesterday.
Yeah, Rahul, the data that we looked at in the morning and in the afternoon, we tried to reflect on the turnouts. One thing that became very clear from the data was wherever the opposition had stronger presence, in whichever of those districts they had a stronger presence, the turnout has been substantially higher than average, which means there has been a strong mobilization of their voters. That's a story we cannot discount.
You're saying Tejaswi Yadav mobilized his voters far more strongly.
The Grand Alliance, for example, Supol, a Yadav Muslim district, high turnout.
I now have the second region seat share. I showed you Champaran, Seemanchal swinging the other way quite dramatically. Coming up on your screen in just a moment from now, the seat share data from Seemanchal. Remember, on the 24 seats of Seemanchal, 15 leads for the Gathbandhan in the Axis My India data versus 8 for the NDA, a 7-seat lead in Seemanchal in favor of the Mahagathbandhan and Tejaswi Yadav. A 3% vote share lead, 37 for the NDA versus 40. So two wild swings. Champaran voting differently in this data, Jai Mrug. You've got the Gathbandhan in the lead, 15 versus 8. Very, very different from what we saw in the first region. The second region seems swinging completely the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I was not there, but what I can really make out is both West and East Champaran, they have a lot of population that is from the community of Mr. Mukesh Sahani, the Gandak river flowing there, the voters around that river. I do expect a wild swing there.
Okay. No, but in Seemanchal, that's what Rahul is talking about. Seemanchal, the fact that Mahagathbandhan, Professor Badri Narayan, this time around, has got a clear lead according to the Axis My India figures. If memory serves me right, in 2020, despite the high Muslim population, actually the NDA had got the larger number of seats because in the counter consolidation, the seats, sorry, because of Owaisi, because 5 seats that he had won. So now the Mahagathbandhan getting a lead in
Almost double the
Himachal,
seats, 8 versus 15.
8 versus 15 means two things. One, that the Owaisi factor has not worked. Muslims have voted very wisely, very strategically. And second, we did not see the kind of counter consolidation that one would have expected.
Yeah, very right, Padmaja. Actually, the entire Simanchal, the issue which India started to raise, Ghuspatia issue, Ghuspatia issue as a mobilizational point. I think if this data is going to be true, it means that couldn't work. And also counter polarization, because if the majority community in certain area become very, very polarized, then the minority in terms of number become meek and mild.
I've got now the third region.
So
in
that
one
is
region,
happening.
the first region of Champaran, you had the NDA do extremely well. In the second region, you had the Gathbandhan more than twice, almost twice the seats of the NDA. The third region is of Kosi, 31 seats in Kosi. It's a neck and neck, 16 versus 15 in the post poll. Veer Sanghvi, this is now becoming a good T20 match. 3 regions down, wild swings and a dead heat in one. 16 versus 15 amongst the voters, 43 versus 42 in favor of the NDA. Just a 1% lead. Very, very different from the analysis so far, Veer Sanghvi.
Yeah, well, at least it's an election now worth watching. Yesterday it was
And commenting on as well.
Yeah, it's better for us if nothing else. But it just shows you that you can't really trust exit polls, because yesterday so many of them all said the same thing, and we said we're sure that the direction must be right. Well, it may be right, but it's not the wipeout that they had suggested if Axis is right.
No, if Axis, something's going to happen. If Axis gets this right, it is hugely commendable, because they called the fact that this was a much tighter race. If they get it wrong, then they have egg on their face. The good thing is we have no skin in the game, Veera. We've commented on all polls equally, and therefore the cephalogist can have his cake, he can dance, he can sing, and we're fine with Litti Chokha, regardless of who wins or loses.
We are just analysts.
Yes, absolutely.
What is happening?
3 regions here. In Kosi, Padmaja, 16 versus 15. The moment it's 16 versus 15, it's very, very difficult to call. Very, very difficult
Now
to call.
let's analyze this area and what the main issues are. Kosi area basically derives its name from the river Kosi, and it permanently suffers the problems of flooding. You know, you've got farmers there. They've always had this issue. Amit Shah went there and he said, you vote us back into power and we'll make sure that there are no floods within the next 1 year. We are going to ensure that. What are the seats, Jay, that are critical to this particular region?
I have Bhojpur as well.
Oh, great.
So we've got 49 seats of Bhojpur. Everybody is now looking at the screen very, very carefully. They're like, Bhojpur mein kya hoga? Let's show you Bhojpur. On the 49 seats of Bhojpur, 27 versus 21 in favor of the NDA, 42 versus 40. This is essentially a seat-by-seat election in the data that's now emerging. 27 versus 21, a 6-seat lead in favor of Nitish Kumar and the NDA on the 49 seats of Bhojpur. It's swinging, Jai Mrug.
Yes.
Region by region, wild swings.
Last time the RJD Plus had about 35 seats in this region. This time it seems like a complete pendulum swing. I think what has really helped the NDA here is the alliance with Mr. Paswan. He has a strong presence here, as well as Upendra Kushwaha's RLSM has been able to add some vote. So that has helped them sort of turn the tide the other way around in Bhojpur.
It'll be good for the NDA that at least these alliances, because many people were of the opinion, Shubrasta, that the NDA has given away far too many seats to Chirag Paswan, that out of 29, he will not be able to really translate them into winning seats. But as far as getting his caste vote is concerned, Bhojpur seems to show us that he is carrying his weight for the alliance in general. Shubrasta.
Chirag Paswan has consistently maintained his vote share percentage ever since he took over. But more importantly, Padmaja, I think this is also with a rider that if these numbers hold true, then it should be a wake-up call for the Bihar BJP. They really need to get their house in order, that despite all of this, if the contest is so close, then what is the new vision that they are offering to Bihar? Whether our JDU has, whether Nitish Kumar becomes the chief minister or Tejaswi becomes the chief minister, both these political leaders are cut out of the same socialist political mold.
Okay.
Bihar needs a vision beyond socialism.
Shubhrashtra, we have data now for Mithilanchal. 58 seats of Mithilanchal coming up on your screen. I can see everyone's eyes in the studio, and I assume when you're watching, whether it's on television, digital or social, eyes popping out of the sockets. In the 58 seats of Mithilanchal, Axis My India predicts 32 for the NDA versus 25 for the Gathbandhan, 43 versus 41. So a 7-seat lead. They're picking it up by and by, region by region. It's building up, but it's a tighter fight than
Again, interesting anecdote. This is where Amit Shah had pretty much camped in his before the second phase, Mithila Haat. You would have seen a lot of his interviews being done out of there. He's gone there, Makhana, Pag, Mithilanchal, again an area from where that young lady is contesting from, Ali Nagar, Maithili Thakur is contesting. Again an area which has got a mix of, and if you could elaborate on that, Jay, a mix of Brahmins. You've also got the VIP, which has a fair bit of vote over there, and Upendra Kushwaha.
Yeah, not only that, we must also remember that it was here that Mr. Prashant Kishore, he did a lot of village-to-village touring in northern parts of Bihar. But when it comes to southern Bihar, he just went for simple campaigns. So I think this region was actually...
You think in Mithilanchal, Prashant Kishore has cut into the vote?
He would have, to some extent. Because in Mithilanchal, East Champaran, West
Isn't his own village also in Mithilanchal? Prashant Kishore?
It's in Karaghar, down south.
Okay.
His village is there. But clearly, he would have tried to cut in here, which has narrowed the fight.
No, but not really. The data suggests that JSP only got 4% of the vote in Mithilanchal. So it hasn't translated much into votes. The big story, of course, if you're tuning in this moment, is that Axis My India is making this a much, much tighter fight than previous elections. Also, Veer Sangvi, what this means is it's a story once again for Tejaswi Yadav of so near and yet so far. 2% isn't that much. If they'd kind of just got their act in order better, if this is what comes true on Friday, they could have also potentially won. It wasn't always one-way traffic.
Well, the obvious question is going to be asked, which is that would they have done better without the Congress? Has the Congress not pulled its weight? That will be the post-mortem, assuming these figures hold. But 2% is within the margin of error, so I would wait before concluding.
But Veer Sangvi, there's one thing that the Congress always brings to the table, and this is parties as diverse as the RJD and the DMK will tell you in Tamil Nadu. And Veera would, bear that out, because there are some people who say that Congress at least has its own loyal vote, which it brings to an alliance, which is why, and again people are asked, why are you allying with the Congress if they are
Magadh now. On your screen now, the data for Magadh, the 60 seats of Magadh, 44 versus 41 vote share in favor of the NDA. So 3% lead translating into a 10% lead in seats, 10 seats lead, 35 versus 25 on the 60 seats of Magadh, Patliputra. This is the area around Patna, 35 versus 25, a 10-seat lead. So it's settling now very clearly in favor of the NDA, as the other polls have suggested, but the vote share figure suggesting a much tighter fight. So in Magadh, 60 seats, 44 versus 41, 35 seats for the NDA versus 25 for the MGB. So the end trend line, Jaimarik, is not very different. It is just that there were certain regions like Simanchal where the Gathbandhan has done very well.
I think one thing is becoming very clear from a lot of the data we are looking even at individual districts. The Gathbandhan has attempted its best to pull its voters out, which is reflecting in the turnout. The second thing is the BJP has no doubt attempted to expand its rainbow by getting in Mr. Paswan, Mr. Kushwaha more assertively. The Gathbandhan has also attempted to expand its rainbow by getting in Mr. Sahani. So they're actually able to make it a much closer fight.
And Magadh, if you're talking about Magadh, this is where Mokama also falls. And Mokama isn't just about Anand Singh's own seat, but you had a lot of anger, you know, Bhumihars, which are sizable, and more importantly, they're also very vocal. They seem to be gravitating away from the NDA, from the JDU. But what happened at the funeral of Dulal Chand Yadav, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of abuse, you know, there was a huge Yadav procession, there were very ugly words said about Bhumihars as a whole and upper castes as well, and that was on every WhatsApp group across Bihar. So that kind of consolidation did happen. Maybe that explains the numbers.
We've got Amitabh Tiwari and Yashwant Deshmukh, two leading psephologists, joining us. Amitabh Tiwari put his data out this afternoon. VoteWipe was the first to pick the fact that this is a much tighter election than the polls that we saw yesterday. And you said it even yesterday when you were on the show, that it's not as easy as it looks. Tell us, what did you find, Amitabh, in your data, which was different from what the other pollsters saw, which led you to conclude that this is closer than what they were imagining?
I think it's a very hyper-local election. The fact that the BJP had denied tickets to very few MLAs, contrary to what it does in other states, and as per our trackers, regular trackers, there is 53% of respondents said that they would not want to elect their MLA if they contest again. RJD denied 46% sitting MLAs.
I have the overall, just
JDU
one second,
and
Amitabh,
Congress
I have the overall seat share data. And this is why polling is such a tricky business. 121 to 141 for the NDA according to Access Media, which means they could, in some of their scenarios, be lower than the magic figure, that you aren't guaranteed a majority. On the other side, they're predicting that the MGB could go up to as much as 118. So 98 for the Gathbandhan versus up to 118. What that essentially means is that it could be a dead heat in some scenarios. It then comes down to how many seats, are the margins very low, what is likely to happen, because 108 on the upper side of one spectrum versus 121 where the NDA spectrum starts from suggests Bir Sanghvi could be in for a very exciting Friday.
Yeah, I hope so. We keep saying this. I hope so. But yeah, this is much closer than anyone expected. But have no illusions. If it's a question of getting a few MLAs to be able to form the government, the NDA will do it.
Yeah.
But even this margin is taking them over the line. Even the margin given for the Mahagathbandhan, they are well short. Look at the numbers that the Mahagathbandhan has got according to this poll. 121 to 141, which means just one short of majority for NDA. But the Mahagathbandhan, these numbers, nowhere close. They are four short. Even their top end is four short of the majority.
NDA gets its worst at say 122, 123, and Mahagathbandhan gets its best at 118. Veer is right. The Amit Shah ji will call up, the ED director will call up, and they will.
No, that's not fair. Listen, let the counting happen on the 14th, then we'll find out what happens.
Governor will. I'll tell you what will happen. Governor will fall sick.
Let
he
the
will go on a
happen.
leave,
Okay.
and the government will be formed.
Okay, Yashwant Deshmukh is joining us. Yashwant ji, बाकियों का तो पोल देख लिया, आपका पोल कहाँ है सर?
आपको मैं पोस्ट पोल दूंगा राहुल जब रिजल्ट्स आएंगे, ताकि आप समझ सकें कि जो कुछ भी उठापटक हुई वो हुई क्यों। अभी तो जितना है सब आनंद लीजिए उस चीज का, लेकिन आपको तो ये बात पता है कि पिछले साल ही हमने पॉलिसी डिसीजन ले लिया था कि हम ज्यादा गंभीर चीजें करेंगे।
गंभीर चीजें मतलब जो पोस्ट पोल कर रहा है वो गंभीर नहीं है। But tell us, did you spot and sense that this is actually a much tighter election than what the polls were suggesting in the first set of polls that came out yesterday?
It's impossible to suggest at this point of time, Rahul, simply because of the turnout figures have been historic high, not just high. For the first time, we are looking at a scenario where the gender skew in the population has been completely upturned by the overwhelming turnout of the female voters. So the question is not, forget about the seat share. You have been, almost 25, 30 years in this business as well. I mean, in that way. And you know very well that vote share is where the crux is. So you need to ask everybody, what is the final vote share and what is the vote share of the male and female voters separately? That is what will tell you the story. Second big story to ask for is where exactly is 18 to 25 years of age voted, and if there is any differential of male and female even in that section of that thing. So I believe this election is throwing up big time, unprecedented kind of scenarios because of the first time gender parity getting into actual votes. 4 lakh more females have voted. It has never happened in the last 7-8 decades. Never happened. So that parity is something very different. Number two, there are 2 vote banks which are working, the new MY as we called it, the Mahila and the Yuva. The Yuva vote bank has 2 claimants out there. Number one is Prashant Kishore, as you all are discussing. The part of the Yuva which is migrant, which wants a change, which is looking for a change, might be shifting to Prashant Kishore, may or may not be converting into seats. I can't say because it's the first time party that they are contesting the elections for. But a significant chunk of that Yuva, which believed in the Rozgar thing, has voted for
Yashwantji, stay with me. KC Tyagi joins us. KC Tyagi is one of the senior most leaders of the Janata Dal United. He's with us on this broadcast. Tyagi ji, ये तो आज जो पोल्स आ रहे हैं उन्होंने थोड़ी कहानी में ट्विस्ट डाल दी. कल तो सबको लग रहा था कि आराम से बैठिए, मज़ा आने वाला है, इंडिया आराम से जीत रही है. ये जो पोल्स आ रहे हैं वो तो दिखा रहे हैं कि मुकाबला काफ़ी क्लोज है.
राहुल जी, मैं और आप लगातार 2004-05 से बिहार का चुनाव कवर करते हैं. मैं पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविस्ट के नाते और आप जर्नलिस्ट के नाते. असल में जो ये ट्विस्ट आया है इसमें कहानी में, वो पिछली बार के आंकड़े लोग लगा रहे हैं कि किस तरह से 5, 6, 7 सीटों की कमी रह गई थी बिटवीन एनडीए एंड बिटवीन इंडी गठबंधन. तो एक तो मैं अपना ये बड़ा क्लियर कर दूं कि पिछली बार जो रामविलास जी की पार्टी थी वो अलग लड़ी थी, और अलग ही नहीं लड़ी, उसका ज़्यादा थ्रस्ट जो था हमारे उम्मीदवारों के सामने था, जिसकी वजह से 32 सीटें हम लोग हारे हैं. उसके आंकड़े सी वोटर के हमारे दोस्त जो हैं इनके पास भी, मेरे पास भी. नंबर 1. नंबर 2, कुशवाहा वोटों का बड़ा फैक्टर, आप तो जातिगत वहाँ के फैक्टर भी सब जान गए हैं. तो उसमें कुशवाहा जी ने भी नुकसान किया. 3-4 सीटें हमें कुशवाहा जी की वजह से हुई. तो उन सीट इस बार इंटैक्ट है. हमारे गठबंधन में किसी तरह की कोई तकरार नहीं है. जितनी सीटें चाहते थे चिराग उतनी उनको मिली. मनमर्जी की सीटें मांझी जी को मिली, मनमर्जी की सीटें कुशवाहा जी को मिली. तो जो जेडीयू का नुकसान हुआ था, पूरे 5 साल तक हम इस तकलीफ में रहे कि हम कैसे उसको कवर करें. तो फॉर योर काइंड इन्फॉर्मेशन, मैं मानता हूँ 80 से कम सीटें जेडीयू की नहीं है. मैं जहाँ जहाँ भी गया मैंने पुरुषों को कंप्लेंट करते हुए देखा 75 साल के इतिहास में कि महिलाओं को सिर पे बैठा रहा है नीतीश कुमार. दिस वाज सेइंग बाय द मेल वोटर्स. तो जो वोट पड़ी. अच्छा, अब कई हमारे मित्र जो हैं पत्रकार, जो युवा वोटर्स हैं, उनका कहते हैं रुझान जो है उसकी तरफ है, आरजेडी की तरफ, इर्रेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ कास्ट. और जब वो एनडीए के लिए आते हैं तो उसमें कास्ट ढूंढने लगते हैं. मेरा मानना है यादव और मुस्लिम जो कोर ग्रुप है आरजेडी का, उसके भी बहुत सारे मतदाताओं ने एनडीए को वोट किया, पर्टिकुलरली जेडीयू को.
जी, पर केसी त्यागी जी, जो अभी नंबर निकल के आ रहे हैं उसके हिसाब से आपके जो सारा गठबंधन है उसका वोट हाँ इंटैक्ट हुआ है. उपेंद्र कुशवाहा जी, चिराग पासवान के आने से फायदा हो रहा है. लेकिन प्रॉब्लम गठबंधन वाली नहीं है, इस बार प्रॉब्लम है युवाओं की. और जो खास तौर पर जो पढ़े लिखे युवा है उनमें नाराजगी की कम से कम इन आंकड़ों से दिख रहा है. क्या ये एक ट्रेंड था जो आपने मिस कर दिया?
नहीं, उसमें मुझे ज़्यादा तो अभी कल का दिन बाकी बचा है. लेकिन मैं आपको ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि मिस जो है वो राहुल गांधी ने कर दिया. राहुल गांधी जब पदयात्रा में गए थे, देन इट वाज ए मल्टी कास्ट मल्टी क्लास शो इन बिहार. और इसलिए नहीं चाहते थे राहुल गांधी कि उनको उम्मीदवार घोषित किया जाए. जिस समय वो उम्मीदवार घोषित हो जाते हैं तेजस्वी यादव, तो तेजस्वी यादव माने आरजेडी, आरजेडी माने लालू प्रसाद यादव, एंड लालू प्रसाद यादव माने वही पुराने 15 साल.
But then why are the younger voters, in these numbers, sir, not showing favorably for you? That will remain a question. I want to quickly bring in Yashwant Deshmukh again on this. Yashwant Deshmukh, your gut for the reason behind these numbers, your gut feeling, are we now seeing a trend where the whole idea of lack of jobs is beginning to impact the minds and the choices of young voters, especially men?
Young males, absolutely yes, no doubt about it. But are young females going the same way? That's my question. If not, then honestly speaking, something tells me with this kind of turnout, most probably the result is not going to be cold this way or that way. I genuinely believe that. I mean, I would be very surprised if it becomes a neck and neck kind of race. But having said that, I mean, there are two, as we have discussed. I'm Muslim, I'm not Muslim Yadav, but Mahila and Yuva. Yuva definitely there is a traction out there. But are female Yuva voters also thinking the same way the male Yuva voters are thinking? So I agree with Tyagi on that. Second thing, with the historic high turnout of the females, there is something brewing out there, and if it is something which is going the Nitish way, then I believe Nitish Kumar is very well in a position to spring a surprise and surprise everyone.
Okay, let's take a look at the turnout because Yashwant is referring again and again. So I put together 4 separate data sets which help us analyze the turnout because we now have phase 2 data. We also have men versus women data. I'll take it on the screen one by one. So what you're seeing first is data going back to 1950. Here it is on your screen right now. 39.5% voter turnout in 1951. Went up to 51.5 in 1967, 62.4 in 1990. That was the highest in any election before this. That's also at the peak of what was building up as the Mandal era. Came down in 2005, a few insipid elections, has now skyrocketed to 66.9. 66.9 is the highest that Bihar has voted. That's the point that Yashwant Deshmukh is making. This is the high, you can account for SR deletions, you can account for a lower denominator effect, but 66.9 is the highest turnout, ladies and gentlemen, that Bihar has reported in its electoral history. That's not all. I'll now show you the 3-worm chart. The 3-worm chart basically looks at 2020 overall numbers, it looks at phase 1 and it looks at phase 2. And you compare hour after hour, okay? So the blue line here is the 2020 overall data. So you can see how it moved. This is 9 a.m., this is 11, this is 1 p.m, going up all the way till 7 p.m. The red line above that is the 2025 phase 1 data, and the green line right on top is the phase 2 data. For example, in 55.9 versus 68.8, that is almost 13% more between last time and now. That is Yashwant Deshmukh, a massive jump in voter percentages. That is unprecedented. Why did it happen? What do you make of it? What do you understand from these numbers?
Fabulous, fabulous thing to show. And I thank you, Rahul, for putting this up because I would like to say, I mean, from the cricketing perspective, see, the strike rate right in the first overs, in the first 3 hours was high. If you look into that, the gap was already right from the start button. It wasn't even like, you know, as the day progresses, then the turnout goes up, nothing like that. The gap was start right on the, that means people were determined to come out and vote. This determined voter was one part youth, one part female. The issue here is when you take into account the youth, they are taking at a one big account, forgetting that half of that youth is female as well. Then they talk about Yadav and Muslim, they forget that half of that voter is female as well. And everybody is analyzing as if 100% Yadavs have voted one way, 100% Muslims have voted one way, 100% Kurmi, Koiri, Kushwaha, whichever way. It doesn't happen that way. I think we have got two Googlis in this match. One is Yuva, one is Mahila, and these things are not really, both of them are not bound by the traditional caste and religion equity.
Badri Narayan, this is your domain. Explain this to us. Sociologically, this spurt in voter turnout leading to Bihar registering the highest voter turnout the state has ever seen. Why, sir?
Rahulji, actually, what we call it, democratic upsurge. There is a theory that called democratic backsliding. It is countering to that, and it's so.
Why have we seen a democratic upsurge?
It's a democratic upsurge of the caste aspirations, the category aspirations, people aspirations.
नहीं तो पहले क्यों नहीं था? पिछले चुनाव में?
हाँ, पहले क्यों नहीं था मैं बता रहा हूँ. एक तो जो बेनिफिशियरी सर्किल है वो बहुत बड़ा हुआ है. पिछले 5 साल पहले 3.5 करोड़ वोटर्स महिलाएं वोटर्स जनधन योजना में आ चुके हैं, दे आर पार्ट ऑफ जनधन योजना. Any scheme you see within 5 years, there is a huge expansion of the numbers of the beneficiaries. So they come under the, so aspiration is to get benefit from this.
So are you saying voter percentage is going up largely because of beneficiaries?
Yeah, yes. I say that the entire...
Jayamrukh, do you buy that?
But then they're not voting for Nitish Kumar. If they are beneficiaries, they should be voting for Nitish Kumar.
I say, you know, if you go in various constituencies in Bihar, even the constituency where CPIML candidates are contesting, the poor term, no one wants to listen. No one wants to listen politically.
But sir, this seems to be counterintuitive for two reasons. One, you are saying that this upsurge is of happy beneficiaries, but the counter to that, it could be angry people or the vote of anger, as V. Sangvi put it.
Angry people is fragmented. How? Like youth. Youth, there is a girl youth, women youth, and the male youth. Girl youth has started their aspirational journey from the cycle and the poshak. So they see future in the Nitish Kumar.
Veera wants to come in and make a
I'm just going to put, you put the percentage data, and I just want to put the actual numbers. 90 lakh more voters turned out. Correct. Bihar has had a 3 to 4% when I saw, and you spoke about the Mandal era politics. Since 2005, you've had an average increase of 3% vote share, except in the COVID election of 2020. So you discount 25 lakh voters, and this is actually a question that I'm posing to all of you, including Yashwant Deshmukh. When you have a new entrant coming into an election, whether it was Vijayakant in Tamil Nadu in 2006, or whether it was the Aam Aadmi Party in 2010 in Delhi, you've seen a spike in vote shares about 8 to 9%. There is definitely new mobilization that plays out. This is possibly the last election of the old socialist coalition in Bihar, so there is an emotional aspect as well. Why are we even surprised at this huge increase?
Let Yashwant respond to Veera's point. Is how much of the mobilization you think is caused by the fact that you now have a new contender in the fray? Yashwant.
Well, I kind of agree with him that, it's an overwhelming new mobilization, which includes the female mobilization, by the way. What I'm just trying to say that all the three campaigns of the Rozgar, the Change and the female, all three campaigns have worked very well, and all of them have pushed this thing. Only issue is that on the male side, there are two claimants. And on the female side, mostly there is only one claimant. I
have some very significant data which I want to share with our viewers. For the first time, you're going to see the party-wise breakup from the Axis My India data. And what this suggests and why it is important is that the RJD in the Axis My India poll is predicted to emerge very clearly the #1 party, not a close #1. Axis My India is predicting a very clear lead for the RJD as far as the individual party-wise position is concerned. 67 to 76 for the RJD, 17 to 21 for the Congress. That's not particularly bad. 17 to 21, 19 is what they had. 2 MLAs they lost, down to 17. 17 to 21 isn't bad.
So the BJP and the JDU both have a strike rate of just about 50%. Both of them fighting at 101 seats each. And according to these numbers, you've got them in the range of 50 to 56.
50 to 56 for BJP and 56 to 62 for the JDU, which means JDU will have that edge ki ladai. A little bit ahead.
No, and KC Tyagi just said that our strike rate this time is going to be better. So you actually have the JDU as the single largest party. That
no, RJD becomes the single largest party.
RJD,
RJD 67.
67. I didn't know. 67 to 76. All right. So they've held their ground. Last time emerging as the single largest party, and this time also the range puts them around
showing
the same
VIP
perimeter.
of Mukesh Sahni between 3 and 5. CPIML, CPI, CPIM between 10 and 14. I now have Praveen Chakravarti joining us. Praveen Chakravarti is the data analytics cell head of the Congress. He was venting and furious on social media, talking about the exit polls, which are all showing a landslide victory. This one poll shows a much closer fight. In some scenarios, neck and neck in a dead heat. Suddenly, maybe the polls don't seem so bad, Mr. Chakravarti. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't think you read my post right. I was not ranting about exit polls. I was ranting about the fact that there's some narrative being spun about some record women voter turnout in 75 years and all that. And I said that's a complete misinterpretation of numbers.
Mr. Chakravarti, these numbers, if we look at them specifically for what the Congress is projected to get, it's again in the same vicinity of last time, 17 to 21. Why do you think that is? This time you contested, although I have to say that the strike rate would be better if these numbers hold up, because you contested fewer seats, you contested 61, but seem to be holding on to that number of 16 to 21, median about 17 to 19.
See, yeah, I mean, your fundamental presumption is that I take these numbers seriously. I don't take any of these exit poll numbers seriously. Even if one believed in astrology, I find it baffling that one would go to an astrologer to find out only what is going to happen tomorrow. So I see all of this quite pointless. Having said that, I think the point is about vote shares, because seat shares are almost impossible to predict. I'm always only interested in the methodology, the rigor, the transparency of any survey, because the surveys are scientific in nature. So from the vote shares that I saw, I don't watch much of TV. I saw a little bit of these numbers on social media. From what I saw, the vote shares, overall vote share seems extraordinarily close, well within what we would call the range, the range of error for any sample survey. So, and I think it is only then fair to say that we don't know anything about seats yet, because votes to seats is extraordinarily difficult, and it is not a science. There is no standard formula unless we go and survey every seat. So I will not comment anything about seats at this point in time.
Okay, but you know, even in terms of vote share, you said that there was a narrative being spun about women stepping out or record numbers, etc. We do know for a fact now, according to the Election Commission numbers, that this has been the highest ever voting done by women. It is 71% plus. That being said, the figures that we have from Access My India say that women in particular have gone again with the NDA. Despite 20 years of anti-incumbency, women have decided to favor, and the relatively not so well-to-do segment of society has also decided to go with the NDA. Why do you think that is?
First, you're wrong. I know you've repeated the Election Commission's percentage number.
Yes.
But the percentage is misleading, is wrong, and it's statistical sorcery.
How is that?
The percentage is calculated based on the total number of women that voted divided by the total number of registered women electors. So the denominator matters. After SIR, the denominator for women voters reduced drastically. So the percentage is artificially high. So I will tell you what is the increase in women voters over the last 4 elections. In the 2015 election, compared to the 2010 election, there was a 36% increase in women voters. This is Election Commission data. Compared to that, according to the Election Commission's own data, this election only saw a 20% increase in women voters. So this narrative is just completely based on a misreading.
Even if I discount the, no, Praveen, 1 second. Even if I discount the SIR effect, and we did the maths to show that off the jump that happened, 4% would have been accounted for by the SIR effect. Despite,
let me stop
no, 1 second, sir, hear my question.
Stop there, because your numbers, the way you're going is wrong, completely wrong. I'll give you absolute numbers.
If you hear my question, you'll be able to respond. I'm saying
1.4 crore women voted, 2015, 1.9 crore women voted, 2020, 2.1 crore women voted, 2025, 2.5 crore women voted. There is nothing to suggest that there's some extraordinary jump in the number of women that came out and voted. These are absolute number of women that came out and voted.
Here's the argument that I want to engage you on. You had, forget what the polls are saying, and I know you don't want to comment on the polls. You had amongst the youth a yearning for change. Ground reports, anecdotal evidence, the polls suggest that. Amongst the women, they were very strongly in favor of the Nemo factor. Now, whether it's 100%, 80%, 90%, that doesn't matter. That there was a very strong pull towards Nitish Kumar. Why could the India Alliance and the Gathbandhan not pull women away? To that extent, Lalu Yadav, the Yadav Raj, the RJD, the spectre of the return of Jungle Raj seems to have held you back. That is the reality. That's what everything seems to suggest.
So I notice a distinct shift in the narrative after the polls, after you've seen the numbers today. Until yesterday, it was all about how the 10,000 rupees was a game changer. It pulled so many.
Why are you so angry, Praveen sir? Wait till the 14th. You're having a go both ways. You don't like the numbers, you want to have a swing. You like the numbers, you want to have a swing. But go for it. Have a swing.
I'm only using your own this one. See, I'll tell you what I am watching for is the third party that seems to have triggered some excitement, whether it actually translated into votes or not. If it did, whose votes did it get and whose votes did it eat into? I think that's an important factor in this election. Second, it is also by now it is quite clear that neither was there been some extraordinary jump in women voters, nor is it clear that women just got completely taken away or booed by the 10,000.
I know that Praveen Chakravarti runs the data analytics cell of the Congress, but I disagree with him. And I'll show you on a chart, men versus women. Remember, because we are comparing percentages with percentages of the available electors, how many have chosen to vote? Take a look at the data coming up on your screen right now. If you look at, not this, the men versus women, the actual voting numbers from the Election Commission website, and you will see that there has been a spurt. Now, this spurt is caused by various factors. Badri Narayan called it a democratic upswing. You know, it's also part cleaning of the electoral rolls.
Yes.
You've removed the dead, the duplicate, bogus voters. Here it is on your screen right now as a percentage, and I'm going back to February 2005. 42.5% of the women who were available at that time voted, who were on the rolls. 49.9% of the men voted. It continued to be higher in favor of the men till 2005 October, where 47% men voted versus 44.5% women voted. After that, the dynamics swung, the pendulum swung towards women. 51.1% of the men who were part of the rolls voted versus 54.5% women voting. If you come now to 2025, according to the data put out by the Election Commission, of the men who were available to vote on the electoral rolls, 62.8% voted, 71.6% of the women voted. This is the first time, just by a sheer actual number, that more women have voted in this election than men. That is not, Praveen Chakravarti, no matter how you spin it, that is not insignificant, sir.
And in fact, Jay has actually mapped these numbers as well, the SIR effect.
One important point is that this number, which is 42.5, in the 80s it used to be 38. So the skew used to be much higher in the 80s. The skew has narrowed. They have overtaken. That's point number one. Point number two, in other states, like in Maharashtra, the women still lagged the male voters by about 1.8% in the last election. In Madhya Pradesh, they were near about equal, but still lesser. In Bihar, it's quite the other way around. They are about 9% higher. So that's the story.
We've got Rajiv Pratap Rudy, senior leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party, MP from the state. He was campaigning extensively in Chapra. He joined us earlier. Sir, कल के पोल्स में तो बहुत बड़े जीत रहे थे. आज के पोल्स में थोड़ा कम जीत रहे हो. अब थोड़ा धक-धक हो रहा है कि अल्टीमेटली क्या होगा?
देखिए, कल 17, more than 17 exit polls indicated that NDA is, in any situation, we are forming a government, so there's nothing to be worried about. It's just the margin which we have reduced in today's poll of a particular organization. But I can tell you, all this is being, you are trying to say that A as such and such. But I personally feel that there is a complete sweep in favor of the NDA alliance. And that for many reasons, I would say. The choice was in the government to choose between Narendra Modi or Rahul Gandhi. The choice was between Lalu, Yadav and Nitish Kumar. The choice was on development and non-development. And of course, two aspects which I would like to reiterate again here. One is the caste factor. Now, the combination of a caste factor in the NDA alliance was far more stronger than the combination of the caste factor.
The caste alliance, Rudiji, was stronger, but this poll says amongst the young, the unemployed, the illiterate, you've got more people voting for Gathbandhan than for the NDA. That's, I mean, even if you win, that is disturbing.
I'm coming back to that. So if women voters, as you say, I could see the attraction towards the NDA government. The youth are also, please do not distinguish the youth of Bihar as youth. We see it every day within villages, within small tolas. There is a sharp division on caste. You say the youth has lost caste and is voting for A, B, and C. It doesn't happen in Bihar. We wait for another 50 years that to happen. First identity of a youth is not a youth, but his identity is of a caste. And the combination of a caste And there is an anger of that young youth who is there on a particular caste brand. He does not think alike. He thinks on a caste line first and then what you call the youth effect later. It is just not a general state or a very developed state, and the things have on this display. And the fourth is, of course, Prashant factor, which I said was the factor which everyone in the Delhi or Bombay was discussing Prashant Kishore. So whenever anyone talked to us, they shot Prashant Kishore. What is he? As if there was no other political party in Bihar. As election came, he vanished. He vanished because he did not have a vote background.
But Mr.
He did not believe in his caste.
You say that a youth is not going to think beyond his caste. These numbers, though, seem to suggest that that youth is angry, and across caste, that youth could be angry, especially when they have a degree. Especially when they're educated, their numbers for you are going lower.
Just for a youth, if you all confine, I'd always disagree. For a youth, if you confine that job has to be with a degree is only in a state and not a nation, we miss that aspect. Bihar youth does not only confine itself to a degree within the state. It takes, and everywhere, even if you check in your studio, half the people who are working there would be from Bihar. So that is an aspect which most of the people think job with a certificate is only in my state. My boys in the state are very ambitious. They know how to go about. They go across. They go for the paramilitary forces. They go for central secretariat jobs. They go in the Navy. So please do not confine the job in Bihar is just confined to Biharis. The fact remains, Bihar has never seen jobs at home. Biharis have gone, whether it's in the
Mr. Rudy, Veer Sangvi has a question for you. Veer, go ahead.
Veer,
Hi, Rudy. Like there's two different interpretations. You're saying that we're underestimating the caste factor, whether people are old or young, caste matters. I have no problem with that. The question I want to ask you is, most people are now saying that the NDA victory has a lot to do with women. And if these figures are correct, it's older women rather than young women. Do you accept that? And is that a good thing for you, that ultimately younger, more educated people are not necessarily voting for you? You're being kept in power essentially by middle-aged and older women? If these figures are correct?
So if I keep aside the youth for a while and talk about women, I interact. I live in a village. I work in a constituency, 40 years in parliament. I understand a bit of politics. And I can tell you, I can read it in the eyes. They don't have a loud noise. They don't make noises. But the rallies, and I attended most of the Janata Dal United rallies because I was a part of that group. I have never seen a response by women. Even before I could complete a sentence, they were all raising slogans and cheering up. There is something within. They have a confidence in Nitish Kumar, or maybe confidence in the government. They feel nice about it. And this 70% voting or 74% voting, which you see today in Bihar, would primarily be for the NDA. Now, you see, in Bihar politics, when you live in a village, there were women in my constituency who did vote for the NDA alliance or the BJP or the JDU. But when going back to their houses, they would always confront people from the RJD and say that we have voted for you. Bihar is still scared of a face called Lalu Yadav. Please remember, maybe in the next 5 years down the line, when he's not well, God willing, nothing should happen to him. But Bihar is still, and the campaign for any political party was not against Tejasvi. The entire political campaign was reviving the face of Lalu Prasad Yadav throughout.
And maybe that's the reason why that Tejasvi also chose to keep Laluji in the background, barring only 2 rallies that he held. Mr. Rudy, Professor Badri Narayan also has a question for you over here.
Rajivji, I heard your entire analysis of Bihar election this time, and it seems a very caste-dominant interpretation. And this interpretation is a bit different from what Modi ji and the BJP officially try to analyze this election, because he's proposed that this is the Viksit Bihar aspirational state election. And so how you are going to link casteness of youths and everyone?
I'm saying, yes, you have a very valid point. You see, when I have to talk on a philosophy, I'm a Thakur, I'm a Rajput. I don't talk about it. But today when I was operating in Bihar, I made it known to the people of Bihar after 30 years that I'm a Rajput, and I have more traction in Bihar today than I had earlier, because no one ever recognized me as what recognition. Everyone is counted. 3.5% of Rajputs, 4.5% of Paswans. It is a counted numbers. The combinations you built up the credibility. Why did the BJP, knowing very well that some of the political parties which it was allying would not fare well? It was not about particular seats or there. We sacrificed seats to get the combination together. Everyone. I hate talking about it, but this is a reality in Bihar. We talk about that.
Sanjeev Srivastava has a question. He's upset with what you are saying. He has a question for you.
Sanjeev Srivastava. With me.
Rajiv Rudy ji, very good evening.
Hi.
My question is very simple. Is that why is it that till now, you have made, the BJP has made such headway in UP, in Maharashtra, what has happened, but in such a big and important state in Bihar, last 20-25 years, the BJP still has not been able to throw its own face, his own leader. They are still riding piggyback on. It's still a Nitish versus Tejasvi kind of election.
Yes. Now you have
Why is
actually
it so?
asked the hi. So Sanjeev, you have exactly asked the question which I have been posing. I said today BJP positioned itself as an all-class, non-caste ABCD party. We never succeeded. Within the BJP, we also have been recognized as a Thakur leader, as a Brahmrishi leader, as a caste leader, or for that matter, Kurmi leader. Now Bihar has turned. Nitish Kumar is an emblem of a combination of Mahadalits. Nowhere in the country, Dalits were divided into Mahadalit. Pichda, the OBC, the Yadavs, and were divided from the other. So we have, and Nitish Kumar has done it beautifully. He caught onto it, which no one in the country did. In Bihar, he caught the essence of Bihar politics. He split the OBCs, Pichda into EBC, Dalit into Mahad, which has happened nowhere in the country. Any other experiment, I do not know whether it has happened. Now, that experiment of Nitish Kumar carrying away at least 25% votes is still intact. We add to that vote, and to get rid of that calculations is still very difficult in Bihar. Please wait and watch. And
Veera Raghav has a question for you, Mr. Rudy.
I have a, you've all defined Bihar politics at the moment. Let me ask you to crystal ball gaze a bit. It's been seen as possibly the last election of the old social coalition of the JDU versus RJD. Would you also see it that way? Do you believe that?
Yes, you see age.
So then who's going to be the face? Who's going to replace Nitish Kumar?
I'm not going to answer that question. The fact remains, everyone is aging. There is an era of Lalu Yadav. There is an era of leaders in my group there. Nitish Kumar also, that is an era. Today, the battle is drawn between Nitish Kumar and Lalu Yadav. The Ati Pichda are with the BJP or the Forward Alliance, and Pichda are and Muslims are on the other side. Whether which makes a bigger combination with the Dalits coming on this side or that side, preferably the Dalits would come because of other faces within our party. It's absolutely clear a caste combination which the political parties have done. Congress should have moved the forward voters in Bihar with RJD. It will not happen because Congress will keep on suffering in Bihar as long as they align with RJD. RJD still has that gruesome face which people, and we talk about it, we make them believe, remind them, and we shall keep doing it till the face is there. And that possibly is the truth which we are analyzing in different ways. And women believe in Nitish Kumar in a very big way, very, very big way. And that is one thing which you all have not kept in mind.
Okay, we'll take that question to the RJD as well. Muhammad Ali Ashraf Fatmi, senior RJD leader and former union minister, is joining us. But before that, Mr. Rudy, before we let you go, quick question. You have a very high-profile person fighting from your constituency, Chapra, Khesari Lal Yadav. What do you crystal ball gaze for him? Because he's been in the news for making a lot of statements. Ram Mandir bana ke kya hoga?
No. My point is, I really appreciate actors. I watch movies, I watch Netflix, and I watch everyone. But for God's sake, this country is gone crazy. 10 days before the elections, they come on a contract to campaign like an actor, and they take up the space of our politics. It's whether for BJP, for RJD, for Congress. For God's sake.
10 day नहीं, वो तो कह रहे हैं कि हम बिहार के दिल में बसते हैं, हम बिहार के लाला हैं.
मुझे लग रहा है कि the way he was moving around, Tejasvi should immediately get rid of him because he would be the claimant of RJD chief ministership very short. And this is what happens to Dagde. So the threat is not to us. The threat is to Mr. Khesari Lal Yadav, is to RJD and Mr. Tejasvi Yadav. And once more, I have never seen an actor come down to a constituency. He's wearing a t-shirt and a jeans, and is being buckets of milk are being thrown on him, and then he gets onto the stage and dances. I get appalled because when we speak politics on a stage, they get up and start singing a song. People start whistling, and where are we in politics? So for God's sake, I don't want to.
Sir, आप भी तो plane उड़ाते हो.
You also have.
Rudy साहब, आप भी तो, that's your USP. आप भी तो plane उड़ाते हो.
मैं plane उड़ा करके मैं पहले politics करता हूँ, 7 बार parliament पहुँचता हूँ, और मैं दुनिया का अकेला pilot हुआ. मैं plane politics के लिए plane नहीं उड़ाता हूँ. Rahul, how do you ask these questions? At times you also go crazy.
But sir, Manoj Tiwari भी तो हैं आपके. That's a tad unfair, sir.
Practice in the Supreme Court and High Court. Why don't you say you're a professor in the
No, I'm actually very impressed. So that we get it right.
Keep impressed.
You're decoding this wrong. Just the fact that you're the one politician who can get into a cockpit and fly. One second, Rudy Saab. that
How do
actually
you
makes
connect
you very
Kesari Lal Yadav
cool.
to my flying? I don't really understand. Matlab, there has to be a connect. When your conversation, you are a very senior reader.
No,
How
no,
do you
I'm
connect
saying that
Kesari
makes
Lal
it
Yadav to
that
my
makes
flying?
it very distinctive, and that's your USP.
So he's a politician and he's an actor, so he becomes distinctive. वो
नहीं।
कमाल है आपका मैंने arguments which you built up is crazy. He's come for
मैं
a
तो
10-day
आपकी तारीफ
contract.
कर रहा हूँ, आप तो उल्टा मतलब निकाल रहे हो।
Okay,
तो आपकी
okay, all
तारीफ- आप
right.
समझ रहे हो आपकी तारीफ हो रही है, फिर भी आप उल्टा
I'm
मतलब
a
निकाल रहे हो।
hardcore politician. I love
Ceasefire. I have to say, Rahul, let's tread very
Sweet
carefully
man.
with Mr.
Rahul
Rudy.
is
We
a
don't
sweet
know
person.
when we are on the
I
next
always
flight to
tell him like
Patna.
Often on
And
the
Rudy
flight
ji
to
is the
Patna, he's our
captain. We
pilot.
don't want
You
to
can
make
never
him
upset
angry.
your pilot. Never upset your pilot.
हम कुर्सी की पेटी बांध करके we don't want to anger you, Mr. Rudy. Pleasure as always speaking to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Great day. Thank you. We catch up after 36 hours.
Yes, I
We'll
look
come
forward
back
to
again.
having you back.
All right, we'll
Bye,
see
bye.
if
Thank you,
you're still in such high spirits on the 14th. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's go across to Mr. Fatmi now.
I should be. Bye.
Let's go across to Mr. Fatmi now. You've got the BJP, Mr. Fatmi, saying very clearly that these numbers are not going to hold. However, what is your first analysis? Right now, it shows a close fight, but NDA is going to be across the finish line. What do you make of these numbers?
No, see, from yesterday you are seeing they are just showing that NDA has won. As you remember in the last Lok Sabha results, they were saying we are 400 par. We will go beyond 400. So that was the yesterday. Today you see the axis, they are coming closer to the majority. But the real on the ground, if you will go, you will find people voted for change. People voted for job. People voted for harmony in the...
Fatmi Saab, I'll ask you straight away. You know, the numbers show that you have pretty much held on to the 70s like you have last time around. कांग्रेस भी है अपने उसी नंबर पे अटकी हुई है, यानी कि वो 17 से 19 के आसपास का नंबर है. क्या आपको लग रहा है कि उनका प्रदर्शन और बेहतर हो सकता था? इस बार आपने उनको कम सीटें दी हैं, सिर्फ 61 सीटें ही दी हैं, but have they pulled their weight?
हो सकता नहीं था, हुआ है. हो सकता नहीं था.
17 से 19 सीटें ही दिखा रहे हैं अभी.
Very well. आपको कल रिजल्ट में नजर आएगा.
कितनी सीटें मिलेंगी कांग्रेस को 61 में से?
In the result. See,
the tight seats come into fray. Fatmi Saab, you'll be hoping, and I want to show this to you on the NDTV leaderboard. Fatmi Saab, आप ये देखिए leaderboard पे जो seats हैं जहाँ पे margin काफी कम है. This is what now the entire Gathbandhan will be hoping for. I'll bring out the seats where the margin in the last election was less than 3,000. There were 35 such seats split almost equally between the NDA and the Gathbandhan. Are you hoping, Fatmi Saab, that चूंकि 2% का ही गैप है दोनों कोलिशंस में और ये मार्जिन ऑफ एरर के अंदर है, हो सकता है कि 14 को स्टोरी में कोई ट्विस्ट हो जाए? आपकी उम्मीद अब उस पर टिकी है?
देखिए, इस इलेक्शन को समझने की कोशिश कीजिए. इसमें यूथ ने वोट किया है चेंज के लिए, विमेन ने वोट किया है, हो सकता है कुछ 10,000 के लिए भी किया हो, लेकिन मेजॉरिटी ने वोट किया अपने लड़के और लड़कियों के जॉब्स के लिए, अपने फ्यूचर के लिए. आज जो 2 वोट जो और गिरा है बड़ी मजबूती से, उसको मालूम करिए ग्राउंड पर. एक तो यादवों को इन्होंने बहुत गाली दिया, चाहे लालू को दिया हो या तेजस्वी को दिया हो, और टिकट भी नहीं दिया. एनडीए ने बहुत सारे टिकट काट दिए और उसकी वजह से उन्होंने जब मेजॉरिटी में वोट किया है, मतलब काफ़ी वोटिंग उनकी हुई है. साथ ही एसआईआर के डर से लोग दिल्ली से, बॉम्बे से, लखनऊ के जहाँ भी रहते थे वो वोटर, वो आए हैं और उन्होंने मैक्सिमम अपना वोट गिराने का काम किया. आप अगर कभी जाइए और जाकर के अंदर से मालूम करिए तो ये जो परसेंटेज ऑफ वोट बढ़ा है ये
so we're out of time. Fatmi Saab, thank you for joining us. When we come back, we'll have Pradeep Gupta of Access My India with us live on this broadcast. He's the one who's spiced things up this evening by suggesting that contrary as he often is to other pollsters, he's suggesting it's a much tighter fight. So why does Pradeep feel it's a much tighter fight than all the other pollsters who will be singing and dancing on counting day? We'll have Pradeep Gupta of Access My India joining us live on NDTV on the other side of a very quick break. Stay with us.